seriously. Is our Secretary of State, Ruth Johnson, taken seriously? Well, I guess if you're a member of the Tea Party, absolutely. But if you're not, and that would include, 97.9% of us, what is she? Is she an enigma? Is she a freak of nature? Or is she a bold visionary that we just haven't quite figured out? Well, the Metro Times just a couple short weeks ago did an expose on her that was anything but kind. As a result of that, she, of course, has become, as Joe said yesterday, a household name. Joining me now is somebody that would like to have that discussion, and her name is Ben Dor. I happen to know Jan. I've talked with her a few times. She is a founding member of the nonprofit, nonpartisan Michigan Election Reform Alliance.org, which advocates for voter protection and comprehensive election security. She is a state-accredited elections administrator and election worker trainer with lengthy experience as a deputy township clerk. She volunteers as the Michigan Election Reform Alliance statewide coordinator, and she joins us this morning to have a discussion about Secretary of State Ruth Johnson. And Ben Dor, as always, a pleasure to chat with you.
Hey, good morning, Tony.
How are you?
I'm well, a little weary, 10-hour days getting ready for the election.
Yeah, I'm sure you are. First of all, let me thank you for all of the time that you not only give to your job, and you have many of them, but for all the volunteer work that you seem to have time for. I know one thing for sure, Ben Dor, I could never keep up with you.
Well, thank you. Sometimes we get amazed by our volunteers. They keep us energized.
Yeah, there's no question that is true. Well, let's talk a little bit about Secretary of State Ruth Johnson. Listen, you didn't wake up one morning and say, you know what, it's going to be my mission to have to tell the truth about our Secretary of State. But there came a time where you understood that what she was saying and what she was doing were not necessarily good. And they certainly, I don't even know that she's hiding in plain sight. She's been pretty obvious about where her partisanship lies, is she not?
She has been very obvious since at least last October, when she announced her, quote, reform, unquote, agenda, which included quite a shopping list of election changes, mostly voter suppression. She has used the terminology of security and election integrity to cover what is basically an agenda of voter suppression. And now she's using her authority over the driver's license branches to suppress driver's licenses for young people under Obama's program for the DREAM Act substitute. And we just keep scratching our heads going, doesn't she understand what her real job is?
Oh, apparently she doesn't. First of all, she finds herself, and these are my words, not yours, she finds herself having more power than the governor by overriding a veto. And we're going to talk about, let me actually, Ben Dor, before I go there, when she was the clerk in Oakland County, did we have any indication that she was this partisan, that she was this conservative, that she was this Tea Party hack?
Well, I'm sure people in Oakland County who had to work with her were at times bullied, and she has a real tendency for bullying. But at that point, actually, we saw a different Ruth Johnson who seemed to have a real interest in getting our elections on track, and she wrote a long letter complaining to the Election Assistance Commission in Washington and anyone else who would listen, Terry Lynn Land at the time, that the new tabulators to count votes in Oakland County by ES&S Corporation were completely substandard, were unreliable, were miscounting the votes, the software was bad. And we were impressed at that time because, of course, MERA has been working on this problem of electronic vote counting and how easy it is to rig votes. And we thought, well, maybe we have a friend in this individual. But it became very clear that she wasn't going to stay with that campaign because the party, her party, took her out to the woodshed about that, and she was never heard from again on that topic. So now she's completely in bed with the Tea Party, which is very disappointing to those of us who would like to see real reform in how we count our votes as well as who gets to vote.
Well, there's no question that's true. Before we go any further, and there are some very specific things that I want to talk about, I do want you to give this audience an indication of what MERA is, the Michigan Election Reform Alliance, and I know we can send them to MichiganElectionReformAlliance.org, but please share with us a little bit of their duty and their charge and responsibility.
Well, we formed MERA after the debacle in Ohio in 2004 when we saw massive vote rigging by insiders who were running the election there in the presidential year. And what we started to see was that Michigan is just as vulnerable to that kind of massive election rigging. And we started working on a plan that would prevent that, and we've linked up with folks nationally. There's a group called the Election Verification Network, scientists, statisticians, who are working on the whole problem of counting our votes electronically and how that's really a bad thing because we have no way then to verify the vote. And what we've discovered in Michigan is much worse than we thought. And we've actually been investigating and hand-counting votes in a number of areas, and it has shown us that the tabulators we're using are not reliable. They make a lot of errors, and in some cases they've actually been well-rigged by insiders. So when we talk about voter fraud, we're looking at the wrong thing. That is a magician's misdirection. What we should be looking at is election fraud, and wholesale election fraud using electronic means.
Well, and that is a big story. We're going to come back to it. When we talk about election fraud, the first thing that comes to mind for me is Jay Spolger and Schmidt and that whole thing on the west side of the state, Jan, where the Secretary of State dragged her feet, either didn't investigate or slowed or dragged an investigation. And if she wants to talk about voter integrity, why don't we start with the people that we're electing to begin with?
Well, absolutely. And every time you hear someone yelling the word voter fraud, look at them very closely because that's probably what they're engaged in. This is very disappointing. Ruth Johnson should have acted on that case. And instead, we had to have other people ask for a grand jury and get the justice process started. And we've seen a pattern, and it's not just Ruth Johnson. It goes back to Candace Miller and Terry Lynn Land, very partisan secretaries of state who, instead of using their office to improve our elections, Michigan used to be near the top in the country in the integrity and reliability of our elections, and now we've really fallen far. And these people have given us missed opportunity over and over again because they have their higher priority is their partisan goal. Terry Lynn Land was on the Bush re-election committee, and of course she was put in office by the DeVos forces, which were not the Tea Party of today, but very similar goals in terms of wanting to have complete power over voters.
All right. Well, again, so much good stuff here. Before we get to the break, what kind of relationship does Ruth Johnson have with city clerks or county clerks or township clerks all over the state?
Well, I think it's a very poor relationship. The Secretary of State has very little line authority. Really, it's a bully pulpit. There are some statutory things they're responsible for, but by and large, they're there to support our 1,517 local city and township clerks in doing their job. And these people are very dedicated. They take an oath to defend the constitutions of Michigan and the United States, and they work often very long hours for very low pay, if any. And here's Ruth Johnson suing 24 of them because they supposedly didn't get their military ballots out by the arbitrary federal government deadline. Well, do you shoot first and ask questions later? That's not how you get goodwill on the part of the people you're working with. Did she even call these folks and find out what their problems were? I can tell you what a lot of their problems were. And I'm sure none of them intentionally wanted to disenfranchise military and overseas voters, but this is just an example of how poor Ruth's relationships are. And if you had these local people talk to you frankly, which many of them are reluctant to do because they're, in a sense, afraid of this woman now, they would tell you that they no longer trust her. She is making very poor judgments about her authority, and she's abusing her authority.
All right, Jan, stay where you're at. We need to take a quick break. I promise you, folks, some of the best stuff is yet to come. When we've not scratched the surface. Unfortunately, we've not scratched the surface, and there is much more to come. Jan Ben Dor is my guest. Again, she is with the Michigan Election Reform Alliance.org. I would suggest that you go check it out. Joe's got it up on the Facebook page as we speak. And much more to do with Jan after we continue.